الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. All praise due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on His last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. Before going into the last section on Hajj, we will just make a brief summary of what the Imam was talking about in the khutbah of Jum'ah. Today, Imam Abdul Rahman is talking about we could say the trials of the eyes. We talked about that, earlier. The idea that the salah is training for the individual to control the various parts of his body, and that these parts of the body, will testify for or against him on the Day of Judgment. And the eyes were required during Salah to look at one particular spot. You shouldn't be looking around all over the place. And this was training, so we said that when a person comes out of Salah, the person comes out of Salah is in control of his eyes. He's not just looking all over the place, looking, maybe into places he shouldn't be looking, etc. And of course, for us, especially us as males, one of the big, fitnas or trials of the eyes is looking at women. And this was, probably the main point, one of the main points that the Imam was talking about in the khutbah, the trials of looking at women. And this looking at women doesn't necessarily mean the women who are walking around in society. It could be, for example, the magazines. Almost every store that you go into, they have a rack of magazines there. And on the cover of the magazines, is a beautiful woman. And it's maybe not, say as in the case of in Philippines or in America, where they will have maybe the whole body of the woman there. In these pictures, the woman will be stripped her face, and when she's covered, mostly she may be covered. But still, they have chosen a woman who is particularly beautiful for the purpose of attracting the eyes of those who, would come near the magazine so that they will buy this magazine. And of course, these magazines, although on the outside it is written these magazines are supposed to be for women, most of the people who buy these magazines and flip through the pages of the magazines are men. So we can see that these magazines in themselves, they present a fitna. The Prophet Muhammad had said that the eyes commit zina. That is, it commits fornication or adultery, depending whether you are married or whether you're not. So the eyes will commit fornication. And their fornication is staring at that which is haram for them to stare at. And he said the private parts will confirm the fornication or deny it. And I'm sure you understand what he means when he says the private parts will confirm it or deny it. That if there is some reaction, then this is telling you you're involved in zina. Right? Because the Prophet ﷺ had also said that the first look, as he told Ali ibn Abi Talib, he told him that he should not follow one look with another look. That is, in the sense that if somebody, you're walking in the street or you're working on your job or whatever, and a woman comes into your presence and you see her, you can't help but see her. The point is that at the point that you've seen her, then you should look away. You should not follow up after seeing her. You continue to stare at her. Because, constantly looking at women, what this does is, of course, it creates, desires in the individual. It creates desires in the individual which he may not, and likely is not able to fulfill. So all he's doing is building up frustration within himself. He's building up more and more frustration within himself. And of course, as psychologists have shown that, these types of frustrations that a person builds within himself, it will come out in different ways. It will come out in his actions, in his dealings with other people. Right? It will affect him. Because every time you have this kind of frustration and that, it's not just that it stays inside of you and it doesn't come back out. No, it will come out in other forms of action. So the Muslim, is advised that he should avoid staring, at women. Avoid these magazines. If you turn your head to see the magazines, then don't go looking through all the magazines and looking at all the women and seeing how beautiful they are. I mean, even without opening the pages, just looking at the covers. You should avoid it. It's not saying that you have to walk around everywhere with your eyes staring on the ground, but that if a beautiful face crosses your vision, without your intention, you should not continue it. You should not follow it up and build up, the desires within yourself. This is, of course, as I said, the main point that the Imam was developing in the khutbah, and it's a lesson that, we should all take heed to and try to put into practice, in our daily life. He also mentioned another hadith or statement of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in which he had said that, if one looks and does see somebody and that person, has created a desire inside himself, he should go to his wife, because his wife has what that person has. So if a person, of course, some of you don't have your wives here with you or you're not married, then for you, you just have to be even that much more careful. And the Prophet ﷺ had said, if you can't get married, you should fast. Means the alternative is not masturbation. Some people take the alternative as being masturbation. That is, causing yourself to ejaculate by playing with yourself. This is not an alternative. It's not an Islamic alternative. The Prophet ﷺ had said, O young men, those amongst you who are able to get married should get married. Whoever has the means to get married, get married. And those who are not able should fast. This is the Islamic alternative, fasting. Fasting cools down the desires because of what is involved in the Islamic fast. Islamic fast requires one to control one's thoughts, one's actions, etc. And also the fact that you're denying the body certain foods, etc. This helps to decrease the desires of the individual. So this is the Islamic alternative. And as I said, not masturbation. Because masturbation does not solve the problem. It only increases the problem. And the person develops that as a habit. That becomes his habit. So for those who are married, if one sees somebody who attracts him in this fashion, as the Prophet says, we should just go home and be with our wives, because ultimately, when you take away all the looks and everything else, it comes down to one basic thing which your wife has that the person has. So it's to help remove this from the individuals who are married. Okay? So from there, inshallah, we now go on to the last section of our series on Hajj. And prior to this, we looked over the practices of Umrah and the basic pillars that were involved in the Umrah, what should be done, what should be avoided, etc. And now we are going on into the Hajj itself. And we're starting from the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah, because the Hajj itself officially begins on the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah. And on the 8th day, the person who has intended to make Hajj should go to Mina. But those who are just making Hajj by themselves, that which is called, we said, Hajj Ifrad, or that's Hajj by itself, not involving any Umrah. The person on that day, he puts on his Ihram. If he was in Mecca, he came into Mecca. If he was inside Mecca, he had come from a long time before, or he was a resident of Mecca, he puts on his Ihram at that point and he goes to Mina. If he was coming from the outside, what he does is, of course, he puts on the Ihram when he crosses the Miqat, and when he comes into Mecca itself, he does what they call Tawaf Qudum, the arrival Tawaf. He goes and makes the circuit, 7 circuits around the Kaaba, right? Without going and making the sa'i, or the walking between Safa and Marwa. He just makes the 7 circuits around the Kaaba. And from there, if he came a day before or whatever, he would do the rest of his salah, and on the 8th day he would now head out to Mina. Those who are making Hajj Qiran, we said that those who brought along with them the animal that they were going to slaughter, they had already, after they made the Umrah, they kept on their Ihram. They're not allowed to take their Ihram off, no matter how long before they made the Umrah. They have to keep on the Ihram. And at that point they just head out to Mina with their animal. So those who are making what we said